The video you are about to watch is from an old woodworking magazine that I published during the years of 2003 to approximately 2006. This was a very unique magazine. It was purely video content and it was distributed on DVDs. The magazine ran for approximately 3.5 years, and then due to financial concerns, we simply had to terminate the magazine. We moved on to other things over the last roughly 15 years. However, there has been a request to resurrect this content, so I've gone through the trouble to get the equipment, the products, everything I needed in order to bring this content back to life to share with everyone. Here on this YouTube channel, we'll be putting up approximately 100 to 120 of the original stories that appeared in that magazine. The magazine was called Woodworking at Home Magazine, and it was truly one of a kind in the world. I really hope you enjoy these videos, and please tell your friends about them.
Welcome to A Turn for the Better. I'm Dick Singh. In this issue, we're going to be toying around with gouges. They seem to hold a mystique where people have a hard time understanding how they work. If we can, we'll do our best to teach you the basics and hope we help. Our first tool that I'm going to explain is probably the easiest gouge to use and sharpen. It is called a roughing gouge. It's meant mainly for spindle work. As you can see, it's sharpened basically straight across. It has no fingernail shape to it or anything else. It's just a straight tool. It's rather deep in the gullet. That keeps the ears back so they do not get caught while we're turning. The next one will be, this is a 1/2 inch spindle gouge. And I have sharpened it to a long fingernail grind, as you can see. It's probably somewhere between 25 and 30 degrees for an angle. I do believe people get more caught up in the tool or the angle than they do on anything else, and it's more important to understand and learn the tool. As you notice, this is relatively a straight line or slightly convex. My next one will be a 3/8 spindle gouge. This is probably the tool that I use more than any other. Again, it's sharpened with the fingernail. For a different type, I have a 7/16 detail gouge. Now, what makes this different from a spindle gouge? The depth of the gullet is much shallower than the depth on a spindle gouge. And what does this do? It does nothing more than add beef to the tool to help keep it from vibration and give it a little more strength. Sharpened exactly the same way. Here are 3 different 1/4 inch spindle gouges. This one happens to be my favorite. It is not near as deep as this one. And this particular one is like a detailed gouge. It works fine, but for some reason, this one just catches my fancy and makes it suitable for me. Again, sharpened with a fingernail grind, approximately 25 to 30 degrees. Here are 2 different gouges. These are forged. In other words, it's a bar of steel that's put in a press and actually brought down with a die and formed as such. After forming, they're hardened and ground. My big problem with this is when they take and make the tang, it is just where it is ground away, and this is the only strength that you have going into your handle. There's nothing wrong with these gouges. You probably will go to a flea market and find some of these and say they're not good. Well, they've served a lot of people for a lot of years and done a lot of work. Just that I believe some of the new tools are better. These are my bowl gouges. They're both exactly the same gouge, only with different grinds on them. This one is much more acute than my long tapered one. And I will go into that when we go to use them. What makes a tool to me? Probably one of the biggest features or factors is the finish on the tool. I do like the gullet to be cleaned up nice. Again, that is part of our cutting edge. If it's all full of milling marks or whatever, it will not sharpen as nicely as the clean one. Even the outside, I prefer to have a nice looking tool. When it comes to handles, well, I make all my own handles. Reason being, when I grab one, it lays in my hand. If I grab the other one, it lays the same way. I don't care which tool I grab. They lay in my handle. The only differences in my handles are the size in relation to the tool. I like to keep a small tool. I don't think it should have a real heavy handle because then I cannot feel what I'm doing. But the better your finish on your tools, the better they suit me. Naturally, as you can see, I've got some relatively fancy handles. They're bird's eye maple. I was told one time, if you can't turn, you might as well have pretty handles. The easiest tool in the gouge family is definitely going to be our roughing gouge. As we approach, bring it high. I'm riding the bevel. It won't cut. Bring it back. See where it's starting to cut? That's our cutting angle. This is not the cutting angle. That's a scraping angle. Start high. Now, I'm not talking a lot of pressure. I'm talking very simple. If you're in a cutting position, you don't need a lot of pressure. As you can see, our surface is good and clean. Everything's cut clean. I'm approaching at a straight on position. Going to lower down to the cutting edge. And then I'm going to take and proceed inward and downward. Straight on a position. Proceed inward and downward. Once again. Now, one of the reasons this tool is so deep, what gets you on a tool is always the trailing edge. If you're going to the right, it's the left-hand ear. If you're going to the left, it's the right-hand ear. The front one, you can dig it in and it won't catch. The back one will. This is the bevel. Now, I believe there's a big misconception in riding the bevel. The only place that we could ride this entire bevel would be similar to right here, where naturally I'm out of position, strictly to show on the camera. This is the only spot where that entire bevel will ride, and that is because this surface being parallel or flat. If we ride the other way, there is no way we could utilize that entire bevel to ride on. What you will ride for the bevel will be the thickness of your cut. If you're taking a 30-second cut, you will be riding roughly a 32nd of your bevel. I'm starting my tool high and basically straight on. My flutes are basically horizontal. See how it's just starting to cut? Now, going to my right, I will roll the tool slightly and change my angle so that I am making more of a shearing cut. I believe to understand an easy way of how a gouge works is to use my old friend, my pocket knife. Everyone knows if you try to just cut in, as that comes around, you're going to get nothing. It's going to be it's going to chip the wood, it's going to tear it. Now, if we present it at an angle like we were carving, we roll off a nice little shaving. Now, this is nothing more than that knife edge rolled. If I come in at this angle, it'll cut it, but it just tears it off. Now, if we come in a high attitude, not at center line, and put a little bit of a angle on it, look at here. If I show you nothing more than this today, please learn that. Just for kicks. Again, starting straight in off the tool rest. Can you hear that? It's ripping it off. It's creating a torn surface. Starting high on our light little biased angle. Look at here. Turning is made up of a lot of little tricks, habits, whims, things that work for you, maybe won't work for someone else. This is one of the little tricks that I like to do. Number one, most people have a tendency to hold the back of the handle and come in, and all their movements have to be very exaggerated. If you need that entire handle for leverage, you are doing something wrong. This is not something that we have to pry the wood out with. We are cutting the wood. I make my handle so that that little ball lays in my palm. And I've gotten into the habit of putting my finger right down the gullet of the tool. When I want that tool to go to the right, I just point my finger. If I want it to go to the left, I just point my finger. Now, I'm not saying that this is great or anything else, but it works for me. This is my favorite tool. It's a 3/8 spindle gouge. I probably go through at least one of these a year. I'm a poor grinder. But anyway, no, I use this tool constantly. It's a very useful tool, very agile to get into. If I was doing bowls all the time, no, I would go to a bigger one, but for smaller items, it's definitely my spindle gouge. Okay, starting this is no different than the other one. I'm going to exaggerate. Okay, I'm way, way high. Slowly bring it down until you start to cut. See that little bit of dust starting to fly? That's your cutting angle. Not this. That's a scrape. Yes, it threw out a little bit of a shaving because the tool is very sharp. Again, if you notice, I'm cutting right to the right-hand side of the center of that tool. Okay, my tool is also canted slightly in the direction that I'm going. Now I'll bring it down. There, it's starting to cut. Notice how nice and quiet that is? Listen to this. Once again from a different angle. Bringing it down. There, it's starting to cut. See the little shavings? Now I will roll slightly to my right and change the angle to the right and ride the bevel across. Again. Has anyone ever had this happen to them? It sure can mess up some finished work. Okay, sometimes I believe it's more important to know what happened than it is to how to cure it. Once you understand what causes it, it becomes easier to understand how to fix the problem. Okay, what the problem is, as your tool lays up here and you start to cut, it has nothing to hold that bevel, and it just rides you right on across. Watch again. Nothing to hold the bevel. We're just going to start right here, and there it goes. Okay, how do we stop that? Okay, our problem was there was nothing to hold this bevel. As soon as the pressure hit that, it just skated it across the surface. Okay, what I like to do is stand my flutes perfectly vertical, bring my cutting or my bevel 90 degrees to this surface. Now, what happens? Nothing. It won't cut. But it does make that line. Once you have that line, you can revert this over into a cutting area or a cutting situation and cut, because that line will hold the bevel in real time. You'll notice my tool is pointing basically towards the center line. Vertical on my flutes. Close to 90. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, it won't cut. Drop our handle, slightly roll our tool and put it into a cutting situation. And away we go. Real time. The height of the tool rest seems to present a lot of problems to some people. Most of the books say that it should be positioned at center line. That is a good starting point. Your tool, your own height, whatever you're comfortable with, makes all the difference in the world. Right now, with my 3/8 spindle gouge, as that lays there, I'm in a very good position. If I take a 1/4 inch one, I'm actually a little high or low for that. I would want to bring it up just a tad more. Why? Just to get it to where I would be able to work best. A larger, you may want to drop it, raise it, whatever suits your physique. Right now, the tool rest is probably a little bit higher than I would at home, because this lathe is actually a little bit short for me. So I'm compensating by bringing the tool rest a little higher and working a little farther up on the workpiece rather than down. When turning, you have two basic dimensions. You have a height of your piece, meaning from the top to the center line, and you have a width, meaning from the outside to the center line. What do I mean by that? As your piece diminishes in size, you not only come down, but you come in. And the path that takes will be this. In other words, you're making two directional moves at the same time. Okay, watch as my tool starts. As I come down, I keep coming in and down and end up right at the center. Again, okay, that was your basic radius cut. Now if we're going to start rolling this corner over, okay, now you've noticed I'm in a different position. I'm not here because I'm not making a straight wall. I can just bring this along and slowly roll my tool over until it starts to cut. That's a given. Okay, now are you noticing how this continues to go towards the center? Now watch the position. As the tool comes in, I start to roll that tool and bring the handle around. Now we're going to back up and show you the body movement involved in this. Okay, we're starting our tool. Notice where my body is positioned. Now as I'm cutting, I have to bring this around. I'm using my body to move it. Do it one more time. Notice how the tool rolls over. Watch when I end up. I'm going to be almost vertical with my flutes. All of this body movement and the handle movement around to make basic a circle or part of a bead or whatever it is to make something round. One of the biggest problems I see are people will start and instead of bringing the handle around, they can roll their tool over, but instead of bringing the handle, they just bring it straight down, and instead of a radius, now you've got just basically a taper. Now, to get that to be a radius, you are going to have to bring the back of that handle around. As you roll your tool over. A bead. First I'm going to strike it out with a parting tool. Notice where that parting tool is starting. High, bring it in and follow forward. Refresher course from a few issues ago. Our gouge right on the center. Slowly pull it back. When it starts to cut, bring it right on over, roll it over. Okay, we started it. Now we're going to have to bring that handle around or it is not going to be a bead. And end with the tool, our flutes vertical. And notice how it quit cutting. It won't cut anymore. That's where you want to end up. Okay, ending up is very, very important. Now, as I bring this down again, now I'm going to show you one of the things that normally happen. Someone will end up in here, and as they go to bring this out, this edge is going to touch. See where it touched? And started right on in. Okay, now we know why we want to end up in the position where it will not cut. Then you can bring that back. End up with that rolled over just a little bit and it's going to climb that wall. Making a cove. Now, we're going to go in and start. Now this tool needs room to work. Imagine using an axe. If you keep hitting in one spot, that axe won't go in. You have to make room for the axe to make a clean cut. So we're whittling this away just like we would if it was with an axe. When we have sufficient room, then we're going to go in here and make our cove. At the bottom of our cove, how do you know where to blend it in? What I like to do is bring that tool down, and when I hit to the very bottom, I push the tool forward, which makes it quit cutting. Now I did a real exaggerated movement there, but really what it is, see now I pushed it forward and it quit cutting. One of the nice features about a long fingernail grind, I probably make mine a little sharper on the point than a lot of folks for two reasons. One, it allows me to do a lot of little intricate cuts, and the other, I guess I have the ability to be able to handle it. The smaller the point, the harder it is to control to get a nice smooth surface. But here I can take and cut this wall, make my other cut across, and end up with a nice square corner. There's a multitude of things you can do with it, so it's just very handy for me. Okay, to quickly recap, there's two of the most important things that I believe, and number one is understanding that you have to go two directions basically at the same time. Remember, the height and the width, we're going to converge and meet at the center. Now, see how our diameter is coming in and down? One more time, take a quick look. Notice how we got nice shavings and we're going to have a nice clean surface. Number two, put that bevel on top and don't let it cut. Bring it back slowly, raise the handle as you do. When it starts to cut, that's your cutting angle, not this. That's a scrape. This gets you a little dust. This will get you a shaving and also a clean surface. Those 2 points are probably some of the most important that you'll learn. I have a piece of dried walnut in the lathe, and I'm going to go through a little bit on our bowl gouges and how to attack our bowl. Okay, this one I have basically probably a 30-degree angle on it. It's more like a big heavy-duty spindle gouge than a bowl gouge. And the reason I do that is I happen to have two. So I can play with two different tools. If I didn't have two tools, I would have to make this one into a more acute angle to do the inside of the bowl. But this one I like on the outside. What makes it a bowl gouge other than more than just being heavy? The strength dampens vibration to keep it from vibrating. The deep gullet, again, the ears are away from the cutting edge so that you don't have that nasty dig in. And just the long length makes it a balance for that heavy front end. So it just makes it a nice weighting tool. Let's start and see what we can do here. Okay, this is basically nothing more than a big spindle. I'm riding my bevel. Bring it down, see it's starting to cut? kind of roll it into the direction that I'm going. Now my hands, or my whole body, I'm out of position on counting the camera angle. But you're more worried right now to see how the tool is working. Again, I'm just to the inside, to the left side of the center. My tool is kind of pointed in the direction I'm going, and I'm riding the bevel. If I push down on the handle one bit, I lose my cut. So I'm just riding just a tad of that handle. And I'm not providing any pressure. This is just very easy cut. One of the things you want to do when your tool starts, it takes a small amount of pressure to start it. If you find that pressure and hold it, the wood basically just goes right to the tool, and it's almost like it's self-feeding. But you have to maintain that pressure that started the cut. It's going to pop off now. Notice the handle is against my leg. And I'm just slowly moving my body, transferring my weight from my right foot to my left. If you like to dance, you know you can't dance stiff-legged. You can't turn stiff-legged either. Just a little bit of cushion in your knees. At the bottom, this section right in here becomes difficult because your tool cannot get over the foot. So I like to use a pulling cut. Now, when I say a pulling cut, I'm riding the bevel. Now I'll just roll it over until that edge starts to cut. And just pull it out. Now, I am riding the bevel. Just a small start will do it. Could I have gone the whole length of the bowl that way? Probably, but it wouldn't have been as efficient. The cut would not have been quite as nice. I'm going to use my more acute angled bowl gouge, and it will work on the outside just as well as the other one. Doing a pull cut or normal cut will also work quite well with this. To let you know, I've got my 3/8 spindle gouge. Anything around the foot that I need trimmed up, I normally do it with this. I can do the pull cut with it, or I can even do the normal bowl cut. The only thing that I have to worry about is that I don't have to reach very far with this tool, otherwise it will set up a chatter. I've turned my bowl around, and I've also got my long pointed bowl gouge. And we need to true up our outer surface, and I'm going to use a shear cut. My surface is pretty good, but I just want to make it better. The shear cut starts out totally on the very edge. Here would be the bevel, and we're starting right with the edge against it. This is not meant to move a lot of wood. It's meant to enhance the surface. Now, do you see that little bitty shaving that's coming out? Now, if I roll it into a cutting mode, hear the difference and see the difference? All I'm doing is putting that edge up there and taking a very, very fine little cut. Now, in real time, this is what you're looking for. Those little fine shavings and a very, very nice surface. This is not a scrape. It is actually a shear cut. A scrape would be this. This is actually right on the edge, not writing on the bevel. It is strictly like dragging that sharp edge across the surface. So your movements have to be very, very smooth and fluid. Use that body. As you can see, my tool is against my leg. I have the handle in my hand, and all this is just a movement of the body. If you can't move your body fluidly and try to do it with your arms, you have a very staccato type movement, and it's going to show up in your work. We have it at about a 45-degree angle. Here would be the bevel rubbing. Here it's not. See that nice, fine little curl? That's the one that we want. This is our more acute spindle gouge. It has the ears pulled way back, and the reason being for that is just what we did. It presents a real nice scrape in its own. Do we need a bowl gouge to shear scrape? No. Here's our spindle gouge. As long as I can keep it close where I don't have to reach, I can shear scrape with my spindle gouge the same as I can with a bowl gouge. Remember how we went to start before and it ran across on us? It does that on the inside of a bowl, especially as your rim is getting narrow and you're getting close to being finished, that proverbial last cut. Okay, same thing. Make that mark. Drop the handle of the tool. Why do I need two bowl gouges? This long point works great, but as I get down to the bottom, I start interfering with the edge of the bowl, which will lift my tool off the workpiece. With the acute bevel, I'm nowhere near my edge of my bowl, and my bevel is still riding. So I can ride that whole bottom all the way down and still put fingers between everything. How do we start a bowl gouge on the inside of a bowl? Bring it down. There, see where it's starting to cut? That's the cutting angle, not down here. Ride your bevel down till it cuts. This works great for if you want to pick up that same surface. You just bring your tool in right up to it, bring it down until it starts to cut. That's the same surface. Now just follow it through and you pick up your surface. Just to recap the differences between the two tools. This tool will go all the way to the bottom, where my long bevel will fall out on the side of the wall. If you only have one tool, you do need the acute bevel. It does not necessarily have to have the ears drawn back that far, but you do need that acute blunt end to take and get to the bottom of your bowl. I hope you've enjoyed this issue's segment on gouges. They're great tools, very handy and easy to use if you learn how to use them and learn their proper techniques. And I've only scratched the surface of some of the things that these gouges can do.
I sincerely hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you truly enjoyed it, please help us share this information with the rest of the communities. Please hit the subscribe button, give us a big thumbs up, and be sure to tell your friends about this channel. Thanks again for watching.